We're starting off with the tropics. Of course, we're still monitoring Fred, which has made its way off of Hispaniola. It moved off of Haiti early this morning and now is approaching Cuba. We talked about how the first kind of problem we needed to clear was, what is this storm going to look like? How strong is it going to be? What's the structure look like once it gets past Hispaniola? Well, we're past that now, and it doesn't look very good. I mean, it's a pretty disorganized storm at this point. As it approaches Cuba, it could get worse. I mean, it could really get torn up if it has too much land interaction there with Cuba. If it stays out over the open water a little bit more, it may be able to maintain some sort of structure. So let's take a look at the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Then we'll look at some models and kind of see what the different scenarios are that could happen, maybe slightly different than what the Hurricane Center is showing. West-northwest at 16 miles per hour. That's been what we've been talking about. Remember, that high pressure to the north is driving this thing. So that is going to continue to be the motion. Winds are at 35 miles per hour sustained. Has to be 39 to be considered a tropical storm. So it has weakened some. And that pressure is up too, up to about 1010 right now. Looking at tomorrow morning, still a tropical depression. We're not expecting this thing to strengthen while it's still interacting some with land. And as it scrapes by Cuba, it will depend how much interaction happens there, whether or not it's able to start strengthening by Saturday morning as it's entering the Gulf of Mexico. By Saturday afternoon, if not before, I would expect this to be a tropical storm again. And then my concern is depending where this goes into Florida. Now, if it goes into the Florida Peninsula much farther south, instead of staying out over the eastern Gulf, what we could see is a possible landfall of a tropical storm. My concern would be if it gets a little bit farther into the Gulf of Mexico, where there's some really hot water, it could strengthen a little bit faster than this forecast is indicating right now. A lot of big question marks, and I think the next hurdle we have to get past is getting this thing past Cuba, getting to Saturday and kind of seeing what's happening at that point. Right now, this is not a concern for Southeast Louisiana and South Mississippi. We know that we have to get past that hurdle of Cuba, though, before we have a really good locked-in track on this thing. Tropical depression, Fred's computer models, again, picking up on where the National Hurricane Center is plotting the center of that storm, which could change going forward depending on land interaction. But one thing I want to point out, notice the storms that, or rather the models that stay a bit farther south and kind of interact more with Cuba. Watch what they do, kind of these green and blue ones. They tend to come a little bit farther west. The ones including kind of that center line, that big black line is the center line. That one stays more out over the open water and pulls north a little bit faster. So if you have beach plans, really need to be heads up about this for late in the weekend, early next week if you're planning to head to the Florida Panhandle. If you are sticking around here in Southeast Louisiana and South Mississippi, it's just something we're watching. And another thing that we're watching is going to be out there in the far Atlantic. You can see a good chance that this one starts to gradually develop over the next several days, but we've got so much time to watch it before it even reaches the Caribbean islands. Temperatures are in the 70s out there. Your muggy meter is showing dew points are in the 70s, so it is going to be a warm and muggy start. Viper radar is starting off dry, but I expect some scattered storms out there today. We'll see spotty storms for tomorrow, might allow us to get a little bit hotter, and then back to a mix of sun and storms for Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures likely in the low to mid 90s for the foreseeable future for highs. 528-88 is the number to call for that Delta World Tire weather phone. And hey, quick reminder, that meteor shower that we've been talking about, John, Meg, it peaked last night and into this morning, but the peak continues tonight and into tomorrow morning. So if you missed it, you still have an opportunity tonight to see that.
I didn't even think about it when I was driving to work this morning, and I got in and I said, oh, I forgot to look up in the sky for a meteor.
So one thing to point out too, if you're trying to look, is that you want to be looking in the north to northeast sky. So depending which way you're commuting,
Sure.
you may not be able to see it.
And a little bit of light pollution here in the city too.
That's true.
Right. And you know, Meg was never distracted
Busy.
behind the wheel and was you
Of
know,
course.
Not driving fast at all.
Exactly,
No.
as she should be, Christy.
Yes, doing this.
Catch it on the drive, but it is important to remember that it probably would be best if you're sitting still and really focusing on the sky.
Maybe
If
not
you are
driving to work.
moving and trying to focus on the road, it might be difficult to catch. And also, you need to be looking in the north to northeast portion of the sky, so depending on which way you're driving in, your car may be facing the wrong direction anyway. So just a thought for those thinking, oh, I'll just wake up early and catch it on the drive in. You might actually want to wake up.
So this is not something they had.
Right.
Gotcha. All right.
She's trying to give us some advice here.
Note to self.
Just trying to protect my look at the tropics, of course. Tropical depression Fred now is what we're watching. Right now, that is the only storm with a name. And it has weakened as expected after crossing over Hispaniola. Next up, it has to interact with Cuba, and it's going to be kind of scraping along the northern edge of Cuba throughout the day today. Here's a look at the stats on it. Still moving west-northwest at 16 miles per hour. The expectation is that in the next 24 hours or so, it will start to take a more northwesterly path around the edge of a high-pressure system to the north and east, and that will allow it to make that curve that we're going to see the National Hurricane Center forecast around Florida. Where it goes into Florida is still a question mark. Honestly, how it interacts with Cuba is still a question mark. These mountainous islands can be very tricky as far as future forecasting goes because it can disrupt the storm, it can change the structure, it can change where the center is, and of course all of that changes what the models are predicting down the line. But I think the bottom line is we do expect this to enter the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and again, where it goes into Florida may determine how strong it is when it makes landfall, because the longer it can stay out over open water, the more warm water it's going to encounter and possibly the stronger it could get. Right now, the National Hurricane Center keeps it a tropical storm through landfall, but if it takes a more westerly track, which many of the models who have it interacting with Cuba a little bit more have it taking a slightly more westerly track, it's going to be able to go over some really warm water and be able to at least maintain or increase that strength a little bit. If it goes over some of those purple areas, that's where we could see some rapid intensification. So hoping that we don't see that, but just something that we're watching for the future. Again, right now this is not an issue for southeast Louisiana or for South Mississippi. It appears like it will stay east of us, but we want to get past Cuba. We want to see this thing kind of get off of that land interaction before we make a final call on that ultimate track. Looking at a 30 to 60% chance, depending on how far out we're looking, for development of the next system coming off of Africa. That one likely to reach the islands as well, and will be one that we, of course, are watching. But again, about a 60% chance now that that one develops at least into a tropical depression by early next week. Temperatures are in the 70s out there. Your muggy meter is showing dew points are in the 70s, so it's another mild, muggy start. We are looking at another day where we will have some scattered storms out there. I expect a little bit of extra influx of moisture could allow for a few more storms even. If you're thinking about getting some exercise in, still recommend you try to do it as early as possible, because as those temperatures climb into the 90s, it could feel like the upper 90s to triple digits today. Rain chances will drop off a little bit tomorrow. Still some spotty storms possible though, and then we'll see off and on storms for your Saturday, Sunday, Monday, with spotty storms for the middle of next week. High temperatures are expected to be in the low to mid 90s for the foreseeable future. That's right around average for this time of year, so no surprises there. Quick reminder that you can call the Delta World Tire weather phone anytime for a check on the forecast. You can also download our Fox 8 weather app, which is a great tool if you are an angler in the area and you're looking for my fishing forecast, or if you are looking to track the tropics or just looking for your hour-by-hour forecast. John, Meg?
Yeah, a lot of people may be wanting to track the tropics over the next couple of days.
Yeah, or a couple of months. Yeah. It really is a great tool because you can zoom in by clicking that radar tab. You can kind of zoom in on the track and really see where the edges of the cone are and who's included.
Or just grab it in the afternoon when you're away from the TV and say, oh, okay, there's the cone of uncertainty.
That's right.
All right, the cone of uncertainty about traffic.
The tropics this morning. I know you're wondering what's up with Fred. Well, we are looking at tropical depression Fred now making its way, about to scrape along the northern edge of Cuba throughout the day today. A lot of the storm activity has weakened, if you will, and we are looking at this again, the center moving off the coast of Haiti. So it has now cleared what I would call the first hurdle of Hispaniola as far as forecasting trouble goes. Once it's on the other side of that mountainous island, we're seeing what it looks like now, where that center is, etc. But looking at the island of Cuba, now you're going to see more land interaction. So what is that going to do to further disrupt this system? The reason I say this is because oftentimes we look at those computer models, we look for a consensus in them, and we look for the steering mechanisms that are driving this system. So what's clear is that there's a high pressure system to the north that's going to drive this thing west-northwest, and as that high breaks down, eventually turn it northwest. That's clear, but how strong this system is and where it's exactly located is still a question mark, and that's what's, I think, going to give the computer models possibly a little bit of trouble. Looking at 35-mile-per-hour sustained winds, we'll get another update here within the next 45 minutes from the National Hurricane Center, but again, it is going to be interacting as it scrapes kind of the northern edge of Cuba. Once it gets on the other side of that and starts moving over some open water there just south of Florida, possibly through the Florida Keys, I expect that we will have a very clear picture of where this thing is going. So again, just off of Cuba, if we can see what the structure looks like, see what the center looks like, we're going to have a good idea of where this thing is heading. All indications right now are that it's going to be somewhere in Florida, whether it's the Florida Peninsula kind of pulling north a little bit faster or the Florida Panhandle. That's still a question mark, and I think if you have beach plans late in the weekend, early next week, you need to be thinking about this. If you were planning to head to Florida, you may not want to be in the way of this thing, because another thing I'll point out is if it is able to stay over the open water a little bit longer, that would allow it to possibly strengthen a little bit more than what you're seeing here. So just, again, something to consider if you had beach plans. But if you're sticking around Southeast Louisiana, South Mississippi at this time, this is not a concerning storm for us. This is just something that we're watching. I mentioned those computer models, and I just want to show you how some of them get kind of crazy. That white one there kind of wiggling and wobbling with an uncertain center. But I also want to point out that these ones that take a more southerly path, the ones that interact with Cuba a little bit more, end up coming a little bit farther west, so kind of getting out over the Gulf a little bit more. Just something to watch. The model consensus line, which would be this black line, again, closer to where the National Hurricane Center line is, kind of hugging Florida and moving up toward the Florida Panhandle. The other thing that we're watching is a bit farther out. Plenty of time to watch this one, but gradual development expected as it approaches the islands early next week. Your current conditions show temperatures around here in the 70s. We're running around the same as we were yesterday. Dew points are in the 70s as well, with dry skies out there. We do have some storms offshore, and I expect some scattered storms to push in during the day today. Overall, temperatures getting into the low 90s. No surprises here. Rain chance is going to be in that 30 to 50% range for the next 7 days. High temperatures will be in the 90s for the next 7 days. John, Meg?
Same, in other words.
Yeah, typical August. It's hot, It's humid, and there's something to watch in the tropics.
All right.
Just fill in some blanks.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Gotcha. Christy, what's up out there?
Oh, great. Weather's throughout the morning to the end, because we're getting so close to that 7 a.m. update. I want to be able to give you the latest information if it's available, if it comes in early. So let's get you through what you need to worry about today, and then we'll talk about what's going on out in the tropics in just a minute. Temperatures are in the 70s out there. We're seeing sunshine on the north shore. It looks like some clouds on the south shore, but that's okay. We're still very muggy out there, and it looks like we're going to stay that way throughout the day. Speaking of muggy, our mug possibly win. Viper radar shows that we have dry skies out there. This green that you see across eastern St. Tammany, eastern Washington Parish, and kind of offshore, those are all birds or bugs or trees or anything that the radar is picking up on that's not rain. That's not rain. We're looking at rain offshore, especially off the Mississippi and Alabama coasts right now. I'm not seeing much else out there, but I do expect storms to start flaring up today, so be prepared. We're going to have scattered storms out there. If you don't see scattered storms, it's going to be hot and humid, which is no real change from a typical summertime forecast like we've had the rest of the week. Temperatures are going to be in the 90s. Rain chances are going to be anywhere from 30 to 50%. I think one of these days over the weekend we could see a little more moisture, so may get bumped up to 50% for one of those days. But again, right now I'm looking at Basically, the trend being today, a few more storms than we had yesterday. Tomorrow, a few less storms, and then possibly going back to more storms Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to really tell a measurable difference because it's still going to be kind of that scattered, stormy nature where some folks are dry and some folks are getting a deluge. That's just the way it goes during the summertime. Low to mid 90s is right around average for this time of year, so no big surprises there. I think the change is whether or not you have that humidity, which we certainly do, so feels like temperatures will be in the upper 90s to near 100, at times could even get to about 105. Looking at the tropics now, let's see if we got that 7 a.m. update in from the National Hurricane Center. Here's the latest positioning. You can see it's now off of Hispaniola, moved off of Haiti and continues. I see a little jump there, so I think maybe we did get that latest update. It is going to be kind of scraping across the northern edge of Cuba, and sure enough, we have the 7 a.m. update. I'm not seeing much change. It looks like the pressure has gone up a millibar, possibly indicating further weakening, but not by much. The winds are still sustained at about 35 miles per hour. The movement's still west-northwest, and this is still a tropical depression. Yesterday morning, if you were watching, it was a tropical storm. We told you it was likely to weaken as it crossed the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and that's exactly what happened. Now, as it scrapes across Cuba, I don't expect much strengthening throughout the day today as it continues to make its way kind of off of Cuba and just south of Florida over some more open waters ahead of the Gulf of Mexico. That's where I think it could start to see some strengthening. And then beyond that, yes, it appears that it's going to be curving north. How far west it's able to get before it does so is still a question mark. And John, Meg, I think the key that we're watching is we got through that first hurdle of watching it. The second hurdle that we're watching is it getting past Cuba today, and then it'll be a little more straightforward. The models have much better idea of where the center is, but that can change as it interacts with Cuba today. So by tomorrow, I think we have a much better idea.
We're still in the just know it's out there mode.
Yeah, I mean, we're not included in the cone right now. I would say southeast Louisiana, South Mississippi. This is not a concern for us right now, just something that we're watching in case there are any disruptions to the track or changes that we need to be aware of.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you, Shelby. Let's head over to Chris.